Imagine standing at the edge of a vast canyon at sunrise. A wooden sign creaks in the wind. It reads, "The Elastic Ranger's Stretchy Saga." Welcome to the land of elastin, the protein that gives tissues their ability to stretch and recoil. As you step forward, you see a heroic figure approaching on horseback. He is known as the Ammonus One Ranger. His armor is flexible, his movements smooth, and on his chest he carries a glowing shield marked AAT. This shield represents alpha-1 antitrypsin, the protector of elastin, because elastin, although strong and flexible, is constantly under threat. Now look around the canyon walls. They are not rigid like stone, instead, they stretch and recoil like rubber. Above you, an arched aorta-shaped structure expands and contracts rhythmically. This reminds you that elastin is found in structures like the aorta, lungs, and skin, where elasticity is essential. Now, focus on the ranger's tools. In his hand, he holds strands of rope-like fibers. These are tropoelastin fibers, the building blocks of elastin. They are coiled, stretchy, and ready to be assembled into a larger elastic network. As the ranger rides deeper into the canyon, you notice something unusual. Scattered along the ground are small, colorful chewing gums labeled P and G. The ranger picks them up and smiles. These represent the key amino acids of elastin, proline and glycine. Elastin is rich in these two amino acids, giving it flexibility. But suddenly, you notice a warning sign nearby. No hydroxyproline allowed. This is important. Unlike collagen, elastin is not rich in hydroxyproline. So remember, elastin equals proline plus glycine, but not hydroxyproline. Now the ranger approaches a strong, muscular ox standing calmly near the canyon path. Her name is Lizzie the ox. Around her neck hangs a glowing copper harness. This is a critical moment in the story. Lizzie the ox represents lysyl oxidase, the enzyme responsible for forming elastin. And the copper harness? That represents copper, which is essential for this enzyme to function. Without copper, elastin cannot be properly formed. So the ranger mounts Lizzie the ox and begins the next step, building elastin. As they move forward, the ranger throws a copper lasso toward the tropoelastin fibers. The lasso binds them together tightly, forming strong, interconnected loops. These loops are called desmosine crosslinks. These crosslinks are what give elastin its unique rubber-like elasticity. They allow tissues to stretch and snap back into shape. Now imagine these fibers weaving together, forming a network that behaves like a perfect elastic band. That is the essence of elastin. But suddenly, the ground trembles. From the shadows emerges a terrifying creature, a massive, destructive being known as the neutrophil elastase ogre. This ogre lunges toward the canyon walls and begins tearing apart the elastic fibers. This represents neutrophil elastase, an enzyme that breaks down elastin. If left unchecked, it can destroy lung tissue. But the ranger is prepared. He raises his AAT shield, alpha-1 antitrypsin. This shield blocks the elastase ogre, protecting the elastin fibers. So remember this key concept. Alpha-1 antitrypsin protects elastin from destruction by neutrophil elastase. But what happens if the shield is missing? Imagine the ranger suddenly losing his AAT shield. The elastase ogre attacks freely. The canyon walls begin to collapse. The lung structures lose their elasticity. Air gets trapped. This leads to panicinaire emphysema, a classic consequence of alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Now the scene shifts again. Lizzie the ox suddenly appears weak and faded. Her copper harness is gone. She struggles to move. This represents a different disease, Menkes disease. In Menkes disease, there is a defect in copper absorption. Without copper, lysyl oxidase cannot function properly. As a result, elastin and collagen cannot form proper crosslinks, so the elastic network becomes weak and unstable. Now look up at the canyon again. The once strong aortic arch begins to stretch abnormally. It dilates, becoming dangerously thin and fragile. Sparkling dust floats through the air like magic. This represents Marfan syndrome. In Marfan syndrome, there is a defect in fibrillin-1, a protein that acts as a scaffold for elastin. Without proper scaffolding, elastin cannot organize correctly. This leads to aortic dilation and risk of dissection. So even if elastin is present, without fibrillin support, the structure fails. Now pause and take in the entire canyon scene. The Ammonus 1 Ranger represents elastin protected by alpha-1 antitrypsin. The tropolastin fibers are the building blocks. The P and G chewing gums remind you of proline and glycine. The no hydroxyproline sign differentiates elastin from collagen. Lizzie the ox with copper represents lysyl oxidase and its copper dependency. The copper lasso forming desmosine knots shows cross-linking that gives elastin its stretch. The elastase ogre represents destruction of elastin. Loss of protection leads to emphysema. Loss of copper leads to Menkes disease. Loss of fibrillin support leads to Marfan syndrome. Now replay the story in your mind. A flexible ranger riding through a stretchy canyon, protected by AAT, building elastic fibers using copper-powered cross-linking, while fighting off destructive forces and maintaining structural integrity. That is the story of elastin, a protein designed not just to stretch, but to return, again and again and again.